So what team should you use with your Lohen? Lohen is just going to be a cryo main DPS, but his kit is going to be a little bit special. He relies much more heavily on his teammates compared to other normal main DPSs. So in this video, I'll just be explaining what he needs on the team and why does he need each one of them. We're going to rank all of his possible teammates in a tier list based around which of them are going to be the best for him. And then finally, we're going to give some team examples. Before we continue that though, if you're trying to get Lohen or any of his teammates, but you need more Primo Gems, I got the solution for you. You should head to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for safe, fast, and cheap in-game top-ups. From Genshin Impact to all of your favorite titles. The Genshin Impact's direct top-up page lets you recharge instantly. Check this out for example. The 8,080 Genesis Crystals price on the official store is going to be $99.99, which is so expensive. But on U7 Buy, you notice that the storefront displays similar prices to the in-game store. But don't worry, the magic all happens in checkout. Once you click the Buy Now button, your total instantly drops to the actual discounted prices. And it can drop even more if you use my code Camilo. How to buy is also super easy. You just type your user ID, select your server and region, pay securely, and your account is going to be loaded instantly. It's that easy. Check the link in the description or the pinned comment to visit U7 Buy, and remember to use my code Camilo for an extra 8% discount. Alright, so first of all, let's start off quickly with what does he need in his teams and why. So Lohen in general is just going to be a normal cryo main DPS. You're just going to pop your skill, and then when you do that, he's going to be attacking enemies and accumulating some like stacks called Joy and another type of stacks called Will to Win. So one of them, the Joy one, he's going to accumulate by his own when he attacks enemies, and when you reach a certain amount, he's going to unleash a special elemental skill that's going to deal a huge amount of damage, which is going to be a considerable percentage of his damage. Now the second type of stack, whenever this special elemental skill is unleashed, it's going to consume the second type of stacks, and it's going to buff itself based around how many stacks you have. Also, your elemental burst is going to be buffed with the Will to Win stacks. So basically, you'll need the Will to Win stacks for you to buff your special elemental skill and elemental burst. And how you can get the Will to Win is each time your teammates attack opponents, you get 1, but if the damage is not less than 1000% of Lohen's base attack, you're going to get 20 Will to Win instead, which is a huge difference. So you'll need sub DPSs to deal high amounts of damage instead of just low amounts for you to gain the stacks much quicker. Also from the passive, if the damage is 3000% or more of Lohen's base attack, you're going to accumulate 60 Will to Win. So yeah, basically you just need strong off-field characters who can deal decent amounts of damage for them to accumulate higher Will to Win stacks for Lohen. And that's going to result in him dealing more damage. So that leads us to the first requirement, which is going to be a strong sub DPS. You'll need at least one strong sub DPS character for you to guarantee having enough Will to Win stacks on Lohen. Now your fourth passive is just going to be the Hex Ray passive. It's just going to increase your normal or charge attacks damage if you have 50% Will to Win, which is also pretty good. Your normal charge attacks are also going to be a considerable amount of your damage. So being buffed by 40% is definitely going to be pretty good. So you'll definitely need this passive activated. And the way you do that is just going to be by having a Hex Ray character on your team. So that's going to be his second team requirement. Also, Lohen is just going to be a cryo main DPS. In terms of like his actual playstyle, it doesn't really have anything special besides those mechanics. So when you satisfy those, you just normal attack basically and then unleash your burst and skill whenever you can. That's pretty much it. So that leaves him in basically two types of teams only. It's either just melt teams or freeze teams. That's basically the only two options. So you'll definitely need either a Pyro sub DPS or a Hydro Enabler on your teams. For the Pyro, you'll need them to be dealing strong damage because Lohen is going to be the one applying cryo and he's going to apply a lot of cryo. So whenever the Pyro character deals damage, they're going to be melting. So you'd want a character who can take advantage out of that and deal strong amounts of damage. So if you're playing him in a melt team, you'd want the Pyro to be able to deal good, strong off-field damage. If you want to play him on a freeze team, you just need a Hydro off-field character. It doesn't really matter that much. If they deal a lot of damage, you just need like a Hydro Enabler. I mean, preferably they can deal high damage, but it's not necessary for a Hydro Enabler. The last thing you might need, which is not really a need, but it's definitely preferred, is a shielder / healer. Obviously, same thing as any other main DPS. You'll need a shielder or a healer on your team. So shielder is preferred, or at least you'll need a healer. Alright, so now let's rank his like main possible teammates in a tier list. And obviously I'm going to explain why I'm ranking them like this. So those are his possible teammates. Obviously those are not all of the characters because they're just going to take so long for no reason. So those are like the main characters you probably want to play with Lohen. So starting off with Nicole. Nicole is just going to be his best in slot option in most cases. As I mentioned before, with Lohen, you'd want a strong main DPS. So you at least have two strong characters dealing damage on your team. And with Lohen, you're going to be able to buff both of them. So she's going to be exponentially better for his teams in general than supports who can only support the character on field or something like that. She's just like an AoE support, which is pretty good and appreciated in most of his teams. She's also a Hex Ray, so she can activate his passive, and she also gives you a shield, which is pretty good, with also other buffs. The only thing she lacks is just gonna be the pyro application, so you'll definitely need another pyro applier, but it doesn't matter. Either way, I'd say Nicole is definitely gonna be an S tier character for Lohen. She ticks off so many boxes. Second character we have is just gonna be Moika. Moika is usually just used as a sub DPS for Lohen, as a pyro applier and sub DPS. She deals pretty decent damage off field, and she's also pyro, so if you want to play him in a melt team, she's gonna be a pretty decent option. She can also buff you in general, so yeah, she's a great sub DPS. I wouldn't say she's exceptionally good for Lohen specifically, so I just keep her at A tier, but she's definitely usable if you don't have any other pyro sub DPSs. The third character is just gonna be Durin. Durin is probably gonna be the perfect sub DPS for Lohen if you're trying to use a melt team. All of his hits are basically gonna be melted because Lohen's gonna be applying enough cryo, which is gonna result in a lot of damage, and is also a Hexray character, so he can activate Lohen's passive. He can also be a buffer, which is obviously appreciated too. So honestly, for a pyro sub DPS, I think he's probably the best. It doesn't really get much better, so Durin is definitely S tier in my opinion. We have Ling. She can also be a good replacement for an off-field pyro applier. So if you don't have Moika or Durin, Ling is definitely going to be viable, and she does apply fast pyro too. So I think even Lohen might be able to reverse melt with her. Some hits, definitely not always, but either way, she's going to be a great sub DPS. She does deal decent damage, and she does apply enough pyro. So yeah, Ling is going to be a great character. I'll probably put her a B tier. I think Moika and Durin are definitely going to be the priority, but if you don't have them, Ling is definitely going to be viable. We have Bennett. Bennett can be a buffer, so you can just use him for the attack buffs, and he can also heal you. Unfortunately, he's neither Hexray, cannot provide you with a shield, and he unfortunately cannot buff your whole team too. He can only buff the character on field, which is going to be Lohen, and you're going to have to stay in the circle. So for all of Lohen's teams, I definitely would recommend Nicole. I think she's clearly the better option, but Bennett can work if you don't have Nicole. He can definitely just be a buffer, but I'd keep him at B tier. I think Nicole is just a much better option. We have Fiorina. You can play Fiorina in freeze teams mainly. You can just use her as a Hydra applier off field. She deals also decent amounts of damage, and she also buffs your team. So I'll probably keep her a B tier too. I think she's a decent Hydra applier for him in general, but nothing really special. We have Kokomi, basically the same thing. She can be a Hydra applier, and she can also deal decent amounts of damage of her own, and she can also be a healer for the team, which is pretty good. But yeah, I'd keep her a B tier too. I think she's just under Fiorina. She provides two roles basically, which is pretty good. I just think in general, freeze teams are not going to be as good as melt teams, so freeze characters are going to be a little lower in general, but either way, they're all good. We have Shengshou. He's going to be a decent sub DPS, but his damage is going to be less in general, and you can also apply decent Hydra. Going to be normal attacking with Lohen, so you can easily activate his attacks, which is pretty good. I think other options though are going to be better in general because they provide more utility, so I'd keep him as C tier, but if you don't have any other options, I definitely think he's going to be fine for a freeze team. We have Yellen, basically the same thing, but she does deal more damage, so I'd just keep her at B tier. And then finally, Mona can also be played as a Hydra enabler. She also deals great amounts of damage of her own off field, and she's also Hexray, so she can activate his passive. So she does tick a lot of boxes in general. I think she's probably one of the best Hydra enablers you can use, so I just keep her at A tier. Shinna is just going to be your cryo support for freeze teams, basically. That's her only use. I think her support is going to make freeze teams much better though, so I think she also deserves A tier for sure. And she doesn't really have many like clear replacements. Escoffier is going to be pretty good too for freeze teams. Honestly, I think she makes freeze teams just like much better just by her being there, so teams without her are going to be like a tier lower in my opinion, because she does deal decent amounts of damage of her own, like she's one of the greatest sub DPSs, and she also provides good utility and buffs to the team. So honestly, I'd probably keep Escoffier at S tier because she is very unreplaceable for his freeze team. We have Citlali. She can definitely be pretty good, especially if you're using Moika as a sub DPS. She can be a great sub DPS too, like of her own. She can also be a support in both melt teams and freeze teams, and she can also provide you with a shield. So yeah, she's definitely a pretty viable option, especially as like a flex if you have an extra slot, but in general she's definitely not like hugely better than other characters, so I just keep her a B tier. We have Albedo. He can also be used as like a last slot flex if you don't have any other characters. He can be a good sub DPS. He can also give some elemental mastery buffs, but doesn't really matter that much, and he's also Hexray. He can definitely be played as like a last slot character, but I think he's super replaceable. He's definitely not gonna be like the best best option in any teams, but he can be played in any teams. So I'll probably keep him as C tier, honestly, next to Xingqiu. I think he can be usable, but there are definitely better options. Lohen can be pretty good. She's just a great buffer in general, and she can also be a healer, which is pretty good. Again, especially if you're playing Moika, the Natlin synergy is going to be great. So I'll probably keep her at B tier too. I think she's a great option. Prune is also going to be pretty good, but especially at lower constellations, I don't really think anything is special about her. I would recommend just using Kazuha for the team-wide buffs, so I just keep her at B tier. Fischl can be used as a sub DPS Hex Ray, but it's mostly if you don't really have a strong Pyro sub DPS, or you don't care about the damage in general, like the damage of the sub DPS, because she's going to be ruined in your auras with her Electro. So even though she's Hex Ray and she can provide you a decent off-field damage, I'll probably put her at D tier, honestly, because she can ruin the aura. You probably shouldn't use her. I've seen some teams being thrown around with her, but I don't think it's a good idea. Sucrose, she can be a decent Anemo, I guess, and she can provide elemental mastery to the team, which can be useful in like maybe melt teams, but in general, I don't think she's the best Anemo. I'll keep her C tier, but she's definitely usable. Kazuha, I would say probably the best Anemo you can use just because of his team-wide buffs. He can work in both melt teams and also freeze teams, so I'll probably keep him at A tier. Finally, we have Emily, also a great sub DPS. She can work in usually just melt teams, and she can allow Lohen to just reverse melt because she's going to trigger burn-in, so she's going to apply the Pyro aura for much longer, and then Lohen can reverse melt his own hits, which is going to be pretty good for his damage. She's also a decent sub DPS. I don't think she's that special unless you really want to play him in like a reverse melt team, then she can enable that, but generally there are better options if you just want to use like a sub DPS, so I just keep her B tier. Alright, let's build out some team examples now from the tier list we listed before. As I said before, it's usually just two team options. It's either just melt teams or freeze teams. So for a melt team, usually you just want Lohen, and you'd want a Pyro sub DPS, so it's a Pyro who can deal good off-field damage, and the damage needs to be decent too. So usually you'd want to use Durin, that's definitely going to be your best option, but you can also use Moika or Xiaoling or whatever. That's going to be the main core of the team, so for the rest you just need a buffer, shielder, and stuff like that in general, and you can use any of the characters I listed before. So Nicole is definitely going to be your best option because she can buff the whole team. So you can use like Nicole and then Shalonen, for example, as the last slot, or Nicole and Prune, Bennett and Albedo, Bennett and Lally, just whatever. Any other sub DPSs, buffers, whatever, as long as they don't ruin your Pyro aura or your Freeze aura, you're going to be good. For Freeze team, it's also going to be the same thing. You just want Lohen as your main DPS. Then if you have them, you just want to include Escoffier and Shinha. They're just great freeze buffers, and you'd want them in any freeze team. Lohen is not going to be different. And for the last slot, you'd want a Hydro enabler. So you can use like Fiorina, Yellen, Xingqiu, whatever. This is going to be the basic freeze team you'd want to build. If you don't have either Shenhe or Escoffier, you can probably just use Shalonen or an Anemo, for example, like Kazuha, Albedo, whatever. Any character who can either buff you or deal decent damage off field. They can be a decent replacement, but your team's damage is obviously going to fall. But yeah, that was the video, guys. Tell me what teams you're going to be using with your Lohens. If you guys leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.